Hello and welcome, I'm your host KB, and you're watching the Retrospective.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Child actors seem to be all the rage in the 80s and 90s. And while there are still heaps of super talented child actors that work in Hollywood today, there doesn't seem to be as many superstars as there was in the 90s. Actors like Devon Sawa and Christina Ricci seem to pop up everywhere in the 90s, sometimes even together, starring in their own youth-driven features that came out year after year. Some have managed to stay pretty active, like Sean Astin or Elijah Wood, while others have seemingly disappeared. One such name is Jonathan Taylor Thomas, known to 90s kids as JTT. He first gained notoriety in the role of Randy Taylor on one of my favourite sitcoms, Home Improvement, before going on to star in a number of films.
Hey Dad, I heard a great joke today.
What was it?
Okay. What did the moron have for breakfast?
I don't know.
This morning you had scrambled eggs and toast.
After 1998's I'll Be Home for Christmas, it seemed like JTT just disappeared. And while he has had sporadic acting roles since then, it doesn't appear that he fell out of favor with Hollywood. More so, he decided for himself to forego any future big projects to focus on his education. Aside from his role as Randy, he had some pretty high-profile roles, such as the iconic portrayal of young Simba in 1994's Lion King, as well as playing the title role in the 1996 live-action adaptation of Pinocchio. But for this episode, I wanted to talk about the 1995 Disney film Tom and Huck. Directed by Peter Hewitt, the film is based on the classic novel Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which was written by the legendary Mark Twain. It stars Thomas in the lead role of Tom Sawyer, alongside Brad Renfro in the role of Huck Finn. Now, for the sake of full transparency, while I am aware of the cultural impact of Twain's work, I honestly have never read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, so I can't speak to the accuracy of this film's interpretations of this material, so my opinions here are based solely on the merits of the film itself. Anyway, the plot sees Sawyer reunite with his recently returned wayward pal, Huckleberry Finn, and the duo happens to witness a murder. The killer is the film's antagonist, the somewhat questionably named Injun Joe, who then frames the town drunk Muff Potter and stakes his claim to a treasure map, which was the catalyst that led to Doc Robinson's death. Having witnessed the murder, Huck and Tom decide to never speak of what they've seen for fear of retaliation from Injun Joe. But with Potter facing a biased mob and a likely death sentence, Tom feels compelled to come forward with the truth, even if it puts himself in harm's way. This all leads to the climax of the film, which I won't go into detail just to leave this video spoiler free. While it is a straightforward plot, the strength of the film, I feel, lays within the depth of its two lead characters and the dynamic between them.
You let him hang for something he didn't do?
It ain't no skin off my back.
Both Thomas and Renfro are brilliantly cast in their respective roles and both do a fantastic job. Tom is seen as the charismatic and affable schemer, while Huck comes off as the tough, yet somewhat aloof loner type. There's an interesting dichotomy between these two lead characters, with Tom appearing to idolize Huck and his carefree nomadic existence and his lack of attachment to places or people. Ironically, Huck in turn appears to be envious of Tom's lifestyle, which has stability and structure, as well as support of family and friends. I personally enjoyed the film as a kid, which, looking back on it, that surprises me somewhat, as the story is set in the 1800s, and I was never particularly interested in period pieces as a kid. But what I think sold me on the film was the perceived authenticity of the film's setting and the overall production. Now, I've never actually seen or experienced Illinois in the 1800s, so I'm not sure how authentic the film actually is, but it feels like how I would imagine life would have been back in that era.
So, you ready to go put some gray hairs on your aunt's head?
What you got in mind?
Unfortunately, the film didn't fare too well at the box office, and it received mixed reviews from both critics and fans alike. I'm not sure if the film's success or lack thereof was in any way impacted by the fact that a film based on another Twain novel was released only 2 years prior, with that being 1993's The Adventures of Huck Finn, starring a young Elijah Wood. Unlike Tom and Huck, The Adventures of Huck Finn was a relatively successful film, both critically and commercially, so with the release of Tom and Huck, it would seem that Disney was trying to cash in on the success of the film's predecessor. JTT's charisma is on full display here, and while the storyline may not be the most compelling, the film's production and setting, along with some humorous gags, make for a pretty fun viewing experience.
Let me whitewash a little. Aunt Polly's awful particular about this fence. Just a little. What do you give me?
While the film isn't a classic by any stretch, it's still a pretty solid and fun movie, especially for that era. Once again, thanks very much for watching this episode. Please subscribe to the channel, and thank you to those of you who continue to watch, comment, and support the channel. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of The Retrospective.